So you said this Arl Eamon raised you?
Oh, did I say that? I meant that dogs raised me. Giant slobbering dogs from the Anderfels. A whole pack of them, in fact.
I thought you were raised by the Chantry.
Oh, there you go, listening to me again. You'd think you'd have gotten past that already. I ended up in the Chantry, sure, but I didn't start there. Let's see, how do I explain this? I'm a bastard. And before you make any smart comments, I mean the fatherless kind. My mother was a serving girl in Redcliffe Castle who died when I was very young. Arl Eamon wasn't my father, but he took me in anyhow and put a roof over my head. He was good to me, and he didn't have to be. I respect the man, and I don't blame him anymore for sending me off to the Chantry once I was old enough.
Why did he send you off to the Chantry?
Arl Eamon eventually married a young woman from Orlais, which caused all sorts of problems between him and the king because it was so soon after the war. But he loved her. Anyhow, then you, Arlessa, resented the rumors which pegged me as his bastard. They weren't true, but of course they existed. The Arl didn't care, but she did. So off I was packed to the nearest monastery at age 10, just as well. The Arlessa made sure the castle wasn't a home to me by that point. She despised me.
What an awful thing to do to a child. I think we can relate.
Maybe. She felt threatened by my presence, I can see that now. I can't say I blame her. She wondered if the rumors were true herself, I bet. I remember I had an amulet with Andraste's holy symbol on it. The only thing I had of my mother's. I was so furious at being sent away, I tore it off and threw it at the wall and it shattered. Stupid, stupid thing to do. The Arl came by the monastery a few times to see how I was, but I was stubborn. I hated it there, and blamed him for everything. And eventually, he just stopped coming.
And you think the Arl will help us?
All I know is that the Arl is a good man, and well loved by the people. He also was King Caelan's uncle, so he has a personal motivation to see Loghain pay for what he did. Anyway, that's really all there is to the story.
So why have you remained a Templar if you hate the Chantry?
Have you seen the uniform? It's not only stylish, but well made. I'm a sucker for good tailoring.
Well, in that case, you should have become a mage.
Oh, you aren't kidding. I think the Templar uniforms are as colorful as they are just so the Templars didn't feel dull in comparison. Last thing you want when you're about to take down some Maleficar out in the woods is to have him point and laugh at your taste in clothing, am I right?
And what's the real reason?
You don't really want to know about my being a Templar, do you? It's really quite boring.
Then make something more, or make up something more exciting then.
You know, I like the way you think. You're all right. If you're really curious, then I'll tell you. The truth of the matter is that I did hate going to the monastery. The initiates from poor families thought I put on airs, while the noble ones called me a bastard and ignored me. I felt like Arl Eamon had cast me off, unwanted, and I was determined to be bitter. But I took some solace in the training itself, I guess. I was actually quite good at it.
Enjoyed hunting mages, did you?
No, I never got that far. I mostly learned about discipline, and training my mind to use the abilities that Templars have. It was difficult, but rewarding. I never really felt at home anywhere, though, until I joined the Grey Wardens. And Duncan felt my Templar abilities might be useful for when we encountered Darkspawn magic, so I kept it up. What about you? Do you have anywhere you consider home?
Circle of Magi's Tower was my home for a long time.
But it's not your home anymore, right? You can never go back for good. I think I understand how you feel. We won't always be traveling like this, you know. Once the war is over, once the Blight is... well, a time will come when we'll have to think about having a real home again. though that seems like a far ways off. And I suppose the Grey Wardens are gone for good, either way.
They can be rebuilt.
I suppose you're right. We can create new Grey Wardens, but we'll never get back those we lost. I wonder if it would ever feel the same. Anyhow, now I've sidetracked us. We'd better get back to what we're supposed to be doing right now.
Alright, so those are the dialogue options we currently have for Alistair, and now we'll go over and speak with Morrigan.
What do you wish of me?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Did you grow up in the Kokari Wilds?
Why do you ask me such questions? I do not probe you for pointless information, do I?
I'm curious. What's wrong with that?
Any number of cats could inform you of the answer to that question, but have it your way. What is it you asked? If I grew up in the wilds? A curious question. Where else would you picture me? For many years it was simply Flemeth and I. The wilds and its creatures were more real to me than Flemeth's tales of the world of man. In time I grew curious. I left the wilds to explore what lay beyond, never for long. Brief forays into a civilized wilderness.
I have a hard time picturing that.
I am no primitive, painted in blood and unable to speak the language. Flemeth knows much of your world and taught me well. For all that I had been taught, however, the truth of the civilized lands proved to be overwhelming. I was unfamiliar with so much. So confident and bold was I, yet there was much that Flemeth could never have prepared me for.
I can just imagine.
I rather doubt that. Only once was I accused of being a witch of the wilds, and that by a chastened who happened to be travelling with a merchant caravan. He pointed and gasped and began shouting in his strange language, and most assumed he was casting some curse upon me. I acted the terrified girl, and naturally, he was arrested.
And what happened to the poor man?
Who cares? As I recall, he was executed. The point being that I was able to move through human lands fairly easily. Whatever humans think a witch of the wild looks like, 'tis not I. Not that I did not have trouble. There are things about human society which have always puzzled me, such as the touching. Why all the touching for a simple greeting?
Touching? Like a handshake?
To begin with, yes. What is the point of touching my hand? I find it an offensive intrusion. There were many nuances that Flemeth could never tell me of. When to look into another's eyes. How to eat at a table. How to bargain without offending. None of these things I knew. I still do not understand it all, truth be told, but then I gave up long ago any hope of doing so. When I returned to the wilds last, I swore to Flemeth that I had no intention of leaving again.
I guess the joke's on you, then.
You were a fine one to be pointing out the humour of fate. Shall we examine your predicament on the whole? Let's not. Me? I prefer the jest on me to the jest on you. Well, let's get on with it before the ground opens up and swallows us, yes?
I have a feeling Morrigan's not going to like us very much in our conversations. Our hero is a rather different person.